quiet town of Riverton, life moved at a predictable pace. The streets were lined with maple trees that turned brilliant shades of orange each fall, and neighbors greeted each other by name at the grocery store. Crime was rare, and when something unusual did happen, it became the talk of the town for weeks. That was why, when Thomas Hale died, people were saddened, but not suspicious. Thomas Hale was 58 years old and had lived in Riverton almost his entire life. He worked as a maintenance supervisor for the local high school, a job that required long hours but little recognition. Students barely noticed him as he moved through hallways fixing broken lockers and repairing lights, yet teachers relied on him constantly. He was quiet, dependable, and private. After his divorce nearly 15 years earlier, Thomas lived alone in a small two-story house near the edge of town. He spent most evenings watching television, occasionally fishing at the nearby river, and keeping to himself. People described him as polite but distant. The kind of man who would wave to you across the street but never stop to talk for long. One cold evening in early November, Thomas didn't answer his phone. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that he also didn't show up for work the next morning. By noon, the school principal called him several times, but every call went straight to voicemail. Thomas had never missed a day of work without notice before. Still, most people assumed he must be sick. It wasn't until 2 days later that someone checked on him. A neighbor named Paul had noticed Thomas's mailbox overflowing and the porch light still on during the daytime. Concerned, he walked over and knocked on the door. No answer. Paul circled around the house and looked through the back window. That's when he saw Thomas lying on the living room floor. Police and paramedics arrived within minutes. Thomas was already dead. The scene appeared straightforward. He was lying beside the couch, one arm stretched toward the coffee table. A bottle of pain medication sat nearby, along with a half-empty glass of water. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no blood. The initial conclusion was simple: a possible overdose. Thomas had been prescribed medication months earlier after injuring his back while repairing a school boiler. Investigators believed he might have accidentally taken too many pills. Within a day, the case was labeled an accidental death. Most people in Riverton accepted the explanation without question. But one person didn't. Thomas's younger sister, Rebecca. Rebecca lived 2 hours away and had always remained close with her brother despite the distance. They spoke every weekend, sometimes longer when one of them needed advice. When she received the call about Thomas's death, she was devastated. But as she listened to the details, something didn't sit right with her. Thomas was cautious with medication. He had complained many times about side effects and rarely took more than the minimum dosage. Rebecca traveled to Riverton for the funeral and to sort through Thomas's belongings. The house felt strange the moment she walked in. Thomas had always been neat. But the living room felt slightly disturbed. The coffee table had been moved. A chair in the corner wasn't aligned the way he usually kept it. And something else caught Rebecca's attention. Thomas's laptop was missing. She searched the entire house. It wasn't there. Rebecca mentioned this to the police officer who had handled the report. He told her it might have been misplaced or taken as evidence. But after checking with investigators, Rebecca learned they had never taken the laptop. It had simply vanished. That was the first moment Rebecca felt certain something was wrong. Weeks passed, and Riverton slowly forgot about Thomas Hale. But Rebecca couldn't. She began looking into her brother's life in ways no one else had bothered to. At first, everything seemed ordinary. Thomas had no major debts, no recent conflicts, no known enemies. But then Rebecca spoke with someone unexpected, a teacher from the high school. During their conversation, the teacher casually mentioned that Thomas had seemed unusually stressed during the weeks before his death. He had stayed late at work several nights. And once, the teacher overheard him arguing on the phone in the maintenance office. Rebecca asked if he knew who Thomas had been arguing with. The teacher didn't know, but he remembered something Thomas had said during the conversation. "You can't keep hiding this forever." Rebecca shared this information with police. Once again, they showed little interest. Without evidence, it was only speculation. Still, Rebecca continued digging. While reviewing old paperwork in Thomas's bedroom, she discovered a small notebook tucked inside a desk drawer. It wasn't a diary exactly. More like scattered notes. Phone numbers. Dates. Short reminders. But several entries stood out. They all mentioned the same place. Riverton High School. And beside those entries were words like records, maintenance access, late-night activity. The notes didn't make